Welcome back to patreon.com/the Derrick Lamon Experience, your one-stop shop for your gaming news. This is the Week in Gaming. I generally record this on a Thursday night, but I had some stuff going on Thursday, so I didn't get a chance to record, so I was able to push it back to Friday, which I'm thinking I might start doing this because it gives you a chance to get the full news cycle. You don't really get many stories breaking on the weekend, so I don't have to worry about it, but I was able to still get some stories that were broken today, so I think I may go with this permanently. I don't know. It means that I'll have to record and then edit immediately, which sometimes I do anyway, but we'll just see. Anyway, really quickly, grain of salt, how we start off this show. Again, this comes from TCMF Games, TCMF2 on Twitter, or if you want to call it X and be one of those weirdos, you go right ahead. Um, the tweet says Uncharted remake and reboot. Two rumors. There's an Uncharted reboot in the works, so this could be a soft reboot like God of War 2018 or a full reboot. There's an Uncharted Drake's Fortune remake in the works. Both of these games are not being made by Naughty Dog, but Naughty Dog is assisting according to rumors. We've been hearing about a possible new Uncharted game for a couple of years. If you remember that PlayStation 5 commercial where they had their biggest PlayStation IP characters kind of just doing something. And then there was the one where the girl was walking through the cave with the torch, and everybody's like, that's got to be Cassie Drake. Remember, at the end of Uncharted 4 at Thief's End, it was the proper send-off because there was the epilogue where the little girl is running around looking for her parents, which turned out to be Nate and Elena, and she goes through, number one, they had the original PlayStation there with the copy of Crash Bandicoot, which I thought was really, really dope. Of course, you get to play Crash Bandicoot earlier in the game, but she finds like all these artifacts, pictures of her mom and dad with Sully and stuff like that, and then she basically finds out, like, she goes to find them and she's like, what is all this? And like, should we tell her? So it's basically, the understanding is that they kind of tell her, like, your dad used to be a treasure hunter. He went all around the world. That's how we met and blah, 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 blah. So the story is apparently going to pick up with Cassie Drake taking up the mantle of her father. Now, again, none of this has been confirmed. Take this with a grain of salt. However, the Uncharted remake, Drake's Fortune, which was the game that really sold me on Naughty Dog. I remember being at work and I was thumbing through a Game Informer magazine, and I worked 3 to 11, and I lived by a 24-hour Walmart, and there was a pullout in the middle of the magazine, and it was the shot of Drake hanging from the U-boat where, you think that Sully gets killed. And this is not a spoiler because that game came out in 2007. So I was like, this looks amazing. It's like exclusively on PlayStation 3. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Walmart and pick up this game when I get off. And I did, and I put it in, and I was like, this is fucking incredible. And then from there, Uncharted 2, which a lot of people think is the best in the series. And I would have to I would actually not even almost, I would have to agree. And then you got Uncharted 3. And then when we got to the PlayStation 4, it's like, okay, what are they going to be able to do with the new hardware? And we were all blown away by Thief's End. Then we got Lost Legacy. I have heard that there is an Uncharted Drake's Fortune remake in the works. I would be willing to say that this one, again, in this portion of the show, take everything with a grain of salt until we get some sort of verification, right? This particular thing, I don't think this is a rumor. I think this is true. I'm not going to go as far as to say that this is what Bluepoint is working on. Apparently, they're supposed to be working on a new IP, and everybody's like, well, it could be Uncharted. No. Because if they were working on a new IP and it's like, well, it's the new Uncharted game. They've worked on Uncharted before. They did the Nathan Drake collection, which was a remaster of all 3 PlayStation 3 games for the PlayStation 4. So I don't think it's that. I don't know who this studio is that's working on that, but I have a feeling this is real. Keep in mind the Game Awards are coming up. From my understanding, I think it's December 12th. This is the 10th anniversary of the Game Awards, so congrats to Jeff Keighley and everybody involved. I don't know when nominations come out, because when they start tweeting, I'm like, okay, so now we get a day for nominations. But no, it was about the actual date of the show. It's November the 1st when I'm recording this. So we're just over a month away from the actual live show. I don't know why noms are not out yet, but as soon as they're available, I will let you guys know. Back to the situation. The reboot, more like the God of War 2018. Hey, Kratos is back. He's, he's exploring the realms. Thor's sons are there, and we find out, he's got a son, and Atreus is actually Loki, and that whole thing. That was a reboot, and that definitely worked. Apparently, there's the God of War, like the first 3 games or something like that. So it's supposed to be some God of War collection that's going to come out. I don't know. Again, that's a rumor until it gets proven. Take it with a grain of salt. But I think that the Cassie Drake Uncharted game would be the reboot of the franchise, and then we see where it goes from there. If the game does very well, then I could see them doing sequels. Now, the one problem is going to have the people who happen to be bigots and they just don't want to see a woman do anything. Why does it have to be a woman character? Why couldn't they bring Nate back? Nate was like, the power of the PlayStation 4 showed you that Nathan Drake had gray hair in Uncharted 4. So he's long past his treasure hunting days. And keep in mind, Cassie is like at least 11, 12 when we get to the epilogue of the game. We didn't even know they were going to have a kid. So 12 years have passed. So Nate and Elena have got to be in their upper 40s or 50s by the time we get to that epilogue. Nathan Drake is not, I could say he's not running around the globe doing all that, but Sully did it. But Sully didn't get his hands dirty like Nate did, so it's a bit different. I kind of feel like both of these may be real. I feel like maybe we are getting a full Drake's Fortune remake, which would be incredible. I don't know who will be working on that. And then we're getting a reboot of the franchise with Cassie, taking up her father's mantle. The problem again is when it's going to come to these people who are like, why does it have to be a woman? This is DEI, this is woke, blah, 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 blah. They just can't stand to see women or people of color in any kind of leading roles. Will that affect the sales of the game is the question. I would love to see both of these things happen. I'm going to be honest with you. Everybody's like, PlayStation 5, this is remakes. Some games need to be remade. For all the people who are saying, no, you don't need to remake Resident Evil. Yeah, you do. There's a remake of Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 now. 5 and 6 are not that far away. You have to remember Resident Evil 7 and 8, which is Resident Evil Village, came out on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One generation, which is just last generation. So we're a lot closer to Resident Evil 6 than we are to fucking Resident Evil, the very first Resident Evil. I was a freshman in high school the first time I heard about the first Resident Evil. That should tell you how long ago it was. And I graduated high school 24 years ago. 4 years beyond that makes me 28 years. I was a freshman. That's how long ago, that's how far we are removed. And everybody's like, well, there's the HD remaster, which was a GameCube port. The GameCube came out in 2001, I believe, and it's the end of 2024. So yeah, the original Resident Evil needs to be remade. And anybody saying otherwise is an absolute moron, okay? Let's just go there. Again, if they do remake Drake's Fortune, I'm there day one. If they reboot the series, I'm there day one. I just hope that with the remake, fresh coat of paint, upscale, rebuild it from the ground up like they did The Last of Us for the PlayStation 5. Now, of course, Naughty Dog is not going to be on this project because we're actually going to get to that in a bit. So whoever this new studio is and Naughty Dog is assisting them, according to these rumors, I hope that they can live up to the vision. And then what they do with the reboot, I'm there for that day one. I really am. I'm a fan of the Uncharted series. I really am. And I don't know if we get to The Last of Us without Uncharted. Now, Naughty Dog is 100% done with Uncharted. We know that. They're not done with The Last of Us. Neil Druckmann has notes and sort of an outline for The Last of Us Part 3. So we know that they're not done with that. But I would love to see more Uncharted. So I'm really, really excited about this. And hopefully this is a real thing and this is not just somebody, blowing smoke up everybody's ass. I really want to see this thing be a real deal. So our top story, we're just going to go ahead and get into it. This is very, very interesting, but I hate to say, we kind of saw this coming. You release a game and you pull it off of stores in 14 days and you start refunding people. A lot of people thought they were going to work on it again and get it back out there as a free-to-play game, but that's the case. At least not for the game. The studio's done. This coming from TheVerge.com. Sony closes Concord Studio and permanently shuts down the game. I'm sorry. So the game is done. I didn't read the byline. The game's done. Firewalk Studios will be shutting down alongside mobile game developer Neon Koi. Sony is closing Firewalk Studio, the studio behind its PlayStation Concord game that it took offline last month after a disastrous launch. The message to PlayStation staff, Harvard Host, CEO of PlayStation Studio Business Group, says, quote, Firewalk Studios will close alongside Neon Koi, a mobile game studio. The shutdowns will affect about 210 jobs. Pause. Number one, I'm not an advocate for anyone losing their job. That's number one. This is between two studios, 210 people. There will be opportunities for these people. What I want to tell them, not that any of them listen to the show, but if you do, awesome. Thank you. If anybody at any studio, sorry, my Mac, the calendar for my Mac is going off. If anybody at any studio listens to this show, I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful. If anybody from anywhere in the gaming industry or, gaming journalists listen to the show, again, thank you. 210 people spread out over 2 studios equates, it's not exactly, but 105 people per studio. We don't know that that's the exact number. I would imagine the mobile game studio is probably smaller, so the bulk of those people probably coming from Firewalk. Again, advocating for anyone losing their job at all. I was afraid that this was going to happen. That Concord trailer, when PlayStation did their show back at the end of May to kind of kick off what used to be E3 season. When I saw it, I was like, and the funny thing was, we all said the same thing. And then we got to tweeting, and you sent out your tweet, and then it refreshes, and somebody else is saying the same exact thing you're saying, just different wording. We all said, this kind of looks like Overwatch mixed with the Guardians of the Galaxy. And everyone said that. This is a hero shooter, and it's not really clicking. The response was just bad. They would give you access to the beta if you pre-ordered the game. Very little pre-orders, to the point where they had to open the beta up to everybody. And at that point, I was like, this is not good, and this is not going to be good for this game or for this studio. The game did terrible, and here we are. Anyway, I'm sorry. Host goes on to say, quote, we have spent considerable time these past few months exploring all our options. After much thought, we have determined the best path forward is to permanently sunset the game and close the studio. I want to thank all of Firewalk for their craftsmanship, creative spirit, and dedication. Host says Concord didn't hit Sony's targets and that the PlayStation maker will take the lessons learned from Concord and continue to advance our live service capabilities to deliver future growth in this area. I'm going to pause right there. This was not going to work. And stop chasing the trend. There is only one Fortnite. There is only one Overwatch. Everybody who went and made a battle royale or added a battle royale mode to their game, they chased Fortnite. It just, Fortnite was free. Warzone is free, but Call of Duty is for multiplayer and zombies, and then people play the campaign. I love Call of Duty campaigns. I'm playing the current Call of Duty campaign right now. They did not need to add Warzone. They didn't need a Battle Royale mode. A lot of other games did not need a Battle Royale mode. I think it was Battlefield 2042 added one. Didn't go off too well. I think they did. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember. Another game that underperformed, but, that's neither here nor there. The fact that they thought they were going to put out 12 live service games and just take the industry by storm, that's not what PlayStation does. PlayStation is the home of the single-player, third-person, over-the-shoulder camera, narrative-driven adventure, a la Uncharted, a la The Last of Us, a la God of War, what other ones? Ratchet and Clank, Spider-Man. There's so many, right? That's what PlayStation does. You have to know who you are and also know your audience. I also think that a lot of the stuff Sony's doing by sending games, I know, this story's from 2 weeks ago, but Spider-Man 2 going to PC at the top of next year. It's the game came out October 20th, 2023. And I know it'll be 2025. So it's 18 months or something like that? It's not a full 24 months. It's definitely not 20. It's less than that, actually, because it would have to be the fall of 25 for it to be a full 24. So, but again, that's not the point. They're prioritizing things that there's a reason you can still get a PlayStation 5 Pro pre-ordered here a week before launch. And number one, the price, but also number two, a lot of people are I can just wait the year and a half to play it on PC. Now, I'm the type of person where I'm going to adopt on day one if it's something from PlayStation Studios. I don't want to wait the year and a half or however long it takes for it to come to PC. Am I going to replay Spider-Man Spider-Man Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2 on PC? You fucking bet I am. Why? Because that's who I am. If I believe in a game and I love a game that much, I will play it on any platform I can get it on. I have Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. I have the first Red Dead Redemption on Xbox, PlayStation, and I'm going to get the PC version that just came out this week. That's just what I do. But again, I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent. This was not going to work. And like doing a couple live service games to test the waters, maybe. 12 live service games? That's what Jim Ryan left us on his way out the door. That's why everybody's like, why is there a point to have a PlayStation 5? Because they have nothing for this generation. Well, guess what? They had to pivot because they said we're going to release 12 live service games during this generation. And when these games come out and they don't work, with the exception of Helldivers, well, then what? Hey, guess what? Nobody wanted this. And we as PlayStation consumers tried to tell you, nobody wants this. And I need you to understand this, all right? So that's why you haven't seen, like, Naughty Dog was literally working on The Last of Us Online. And then they're like, hey, wait, to support this, we'd have to become an online studio, and that's not what we do. No shit. No shit. Anyway, back to the article. Concord debuted on August 23rd on both PS5 and PC, but Sony took the game offline on September 6th after poor sales of the game. Estimates have put sales at under 25,000, and Concord only managed to hit an all-time peak of just 697 players on Steam. That's insane. Lower than launch peak of the Lord of the Rings Gollum, which was a bad game as well. Sony's Neon Koi mobile game development studio is also shutting down despite both saying mobile remains a priority growth area. Sony originally acquired the German-Finnish studio when it was known as Savage Game Studios in 2022, and the team was working on an unannounced AAA mobile live service action game. I'm going to pause right there. Mobile gaming is not what they thought it would be. That's why, I don't know, I would love to see what the numbers are on Apple Arcade. I would really love to see what the numbers are on Apple Arcade. I don't know how many people are really playing a lot of those games. Now, I play some stuff on my iPad, but you know how I do it? I have an Xbox controller and a PlayStation DualSense controller synced to my iPad Pro. So I can play games when I'm out and I don't have access to either my consoles or my PC. It's not to play stuff from Apple Arcade. I can guarantee you that. So them investing in a mobile studio, I thought that was actually kind of stupid. I'm going to be completely honest with you. But again, I don't write the checks over at Sony, so I don't have a say-so. But as a consumer, maybe they should poll us. Because those of us who buy a lot of PlayStation consoles and media, I remember when the PS5 pre-orders went live, everybody's like, how'd you get an email from Sony? I was like, do you know how many fucking games I've bought for my PlayStation? I've been a member of this ecosystem since the very first PlayStation. Because Final Fantasy VII was going to be exclusive on PlayStation. And I was like, well, I'm not going to not fucking play the next Final Fantasy game, which turned out to be one of the greatest games of all time. But I digress. With this refocused approach, Neon Koi will close and its mobile action game will not be moving forward, says Hulse. Both decisions were given serious thought and ultimately feel they are right ones to strengthen the organization. Some of the impacted developers may find roles within Sony's other studios, but the rest will join thousands in the game industry that have been laid off over the past couple of years. Yeah, this really sucks. Firewalk tweeted, quote, Firewalk is signing off one last time. Firewalk began with the idea of bringing the joy of multiplayer to a larger audience. Along the way, we assembled an incredible team who were able to, quote, navigate growing into a new startup into a team during a global pandemic. Firewalk was founded in 2018 and was very small for its first couple of years, only entering full production in 2022. Build a new customized next-generation FPS engine in Unreal 4 and 5, delivering top-tier gameplay feel, beautiful worlds, and a performance 60 frames per second technical experience on a stable and scalable back end on PS5 and PC to hundreds of thousands of players in our beta. When the numbers didn't look good from the beta, again, like I said, you had to pre-order to get access to the beta, and then they made it available to everybody, which told you what? That those pre-order numbers were not good. Manage an acquisition integration while readying technical and preliminary tests, and ultimately ship and deliver a great FPS experience to players, even if it landed much more narrowly than hoped against a heavily consolidated market. We took some risk along the way, marrying aspects of card battlers and fighting games with first-person shooters. And although some of these other aspects of the IP didn't land as we hoped, the idea of putting new things into the world is critical to pushing the medium forward. The talent at Firewalk and the level of individual craft is truly world-class, and teams within Sony Interactive Entertainment and across the industry will be fortunate to work with them. Please reach out to recruiting at PlayStation for inquiries, and thank you all to the very many teams, partners, and fans who supported us along the way. See you in the 10th Firewalk Studios in transmission. Again, this sucks because I'm not an advocate of anyone losing their job. But unfortunately, the writing was very much on the wall. The writing was on the wall. This was not going to go good. So there's a little more to this. And again, thankfully, I pushed back the recording because the new information came out yesterday evening. This comes from VideoGamesChronicle.com. Sony closed Concord Studio Firewalk to further its monopoly in games, labor body says. This is interesting. The Communication Workers of America, CWA, has claimed that Sony's decision to close Firewalk and Neon Toy was a move to further its monopoly position in the video game industry. As reported by a game developer, the labor body condemned Sony's decision, which this week saw it close 2 of its studios. Parent company Sony Interactive Entertainment, which only acquired Firewalk last year, confirmed on Tuesday that it was shutting the company after its debut title Concord bombed. Quote, collective bargaining not only allows workers a seat at the table to bargain for fair compensation, but also a voice on the job to have a say over how workers will be impacted by job cuts, the CWA said in a statement. Firewalk's first and only release was Concord, a live service shooter, which Sony signed early in development for an initial $200 million, initial $200 million according to Kotaku. Its sources claim the amount wasn't enough to cover the game's full development and also didn't include the acquisition of Concord IP rights or Washington-based Firewalk itself. An earlier report claimed it cost $400 million to make the game. Sony took Concord offline and pulled the game from sale within 2 weeks of its release this summer, citing a poor reception from players. Sorry. The article goes on to say Sony's decision to dissolve studios outside of their walled garden of PlayStation exclusive content rather than making games that have to compete in the highly diverse and competitive mobile game market should be a cautionary warning sign of Sony's interest in furthering their monopoly position in the video game industry, the CWA continued. CWA plans to raise the anti-competitive impacts of Sony's increasing monopoly and power with the appropriate antitrust regulators, policymakers, and stakeholders. Was the CWA this boisterous and loud when Microsoft was acquiring whole publishers? Sony acquired a small studio. Between the 2 studios that were shut down, 210 employees. Microsoft acquired whole publishers, Bethesda ZeniMax, and then Activision Blizzard King. Where was the CWA when they shut down the studio that did Hi-Fi Rush? Where's the CWA when they shut down Arcane Austin? I think Arcane Austin did that vampire game, the game that did not do well. Fuck. It came out the same day as Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I can't think of it right now. It was supposed to be one of the big ones for Xbox, along with Starfield, and it just didn't hit. Where was the CWA when this was happening? Because if they were there, then I apologize in advance. But I don't remember hearing this. Sony does not have a monopoly. Microsoft literally acquired 2 publishers. Come on, buddy, what are we talking? What the fuck are we talking about here? This is absolutely insanity, right? They're wrong. Sony does not have a monopoly. Microsoft is the largest, one of the largest tech companies in the world. Why? Because I think 75 to 80% of all PCs around the world use Windows as their operating system. Microsoft doesn't need Xbox to keep them solvent. They don't. That's what Windows is for. Now, Microsoft would like to see a return on the investment when they gave Phil Spencer a fucking blank check and said, go do what you got to do to make this Xbox thing work. And Phil, again, acquired Bethesda ZeniMax and Activision Blizzard and King. But Microsoft doesn't need Xbox. If they sold them off, a lot of people will be crying because they invested so much into the ecosystem. A lot of people are crying right now, but that's neither here nor there. So I find this actually very fucking funny that the CWA had this to say. But again, it's a shitty situation. I'm not advocating for anyone to lose their job, especially in our current society. America is this is the capital of capitalism. Understand that. So you can't survive if you're not gainfully employed. And even if you are gainfully employed, survival is it's not guaranteed because inflation has caused the cost of living to skyrocket. everything is going up but our wages. So to the CWA, I say, I don't know. I'm going to go back and do some research, and I'm not going to come back and record like, oh, they did talk shit about Microsoft. But if they think that this is a monopoly, they got another fucking thing coming. Just saying. Because, yes, Sony shut down 2 studios. How many studios has Microsoft shut down? And how many people have been laid off since the Activision acquisition was closed last fall? It's a ridiculous amount of people that have lost their job over there. And to those people, again, I still send my love, because they all thought when Microsoft came in, they're like, oh, well, this is going to make sure that that we can get these projects out and we get to do these passion projects. I can't think of the damn name of that game, but I remember somebody saying when Microsoft came in to kind of take a look at our studio, the vampire game, they literally were walking past somebody's desk, and it's like, okay, well, this belongs to us now. Bethesda and ZeniMax and all of its studios, they are now property of Microsoft Incorporated. And they saw them working on the PlayStation port of the game, and they're like, oh, no, you can cancel that. Stop working on that. Wait, what were you? It doesn't matter. I answered to Phil Spencer. We own this now. There's no PlayStation version coming out. Stop working on that. And then the crazy thing is, hey, guess what? Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which is supposed to be a big banger for Xbox, this is going to be one for them. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and put that on PlayStation next spring. Wait, what? Because they thought they had the kill shot. Like Drake thought that Family Matters was the kill shot to Kendrick. Microsoft thought that the acquiring these publishers was going to be the kill shot. And it just didn't work. It didn't work. They had to change the price of Game Pass, allow day and date only on Game Pass Ultimate. So all those people who thought they were going to pay $10 a month to play Call of Duty, joke's on you. Give me the 20. And why? My favorite saying on this show, and I've said it many of times since they shut down the studio that created Hi-Fi Rush, and then they were acquired by somebody else, but that's neither here nor there. $80 billion is spent on 2 publishers since 2020. Guess what? We got to get that money back in blood. I don't care about exclusive titles. And also, Satya Nadella got a raise. I will talk about that later as well. In other news, this comes from our good friends over at IGN. Remedy has recouped most, not all, but most of the development and marketing expenses for Alan Wake 2, which is a great game, by the way. Alan Wake 2 continues to be a success for Remedy, with the company reporting today it has recouped most of the development and marketing costs of the game as of the end of September. In its quarterly earnings today, Remedy reported that while the game is not yet generating royalties, it's close to fully recouping costs thanks to continued strong sales. The studio has released 2 expansions for Alan Wake this year that have likely helped: Night Springs and more recently Lake House. I haven't played the Lake House yet. I need to finish Alan Wake 2. That's a whole nother story. My backlog is a mile fucking long. Alan Wake 2 shifting to generating royalties seems inevitable and will likely be a big deal for Remedy. It's the company's fastest selling game so far, selling 1.3 million copies as of March 20th of this year. Currently, the company's only major sources of ongoing revenue are sales of Control and older Alan Wake games. Alan Wake, the original Alan Wake, does have a remaster. I don't know how much it costs. It's in my PlayStation library, but again, it's available if you guys want to play it. Fortunately, it's getting infusions of cash from partner companies for the purpose of developing more games. For instance, Annapurna Pictures recently entered into a partnership with the studio that will fund 50% of the development of Control 2, while Annapurna creates film and TV spin-offs of Control and Alan Wake. Remedy reports that Control 2 development is on track to start full production in 2025, with a number of critical features already implemented. There's a lot more, but I'm not going to go into it. It's about more revenue stuff, and if you want, you can head on over to IGN for that. The thing with this is that it's not like their games are doing bad, right? Keep in mind, like, they have a great history. Max Payne 2, they have the relationship with Rockstar Games. That's why I think Rockstar, you can purchase Max Payne 3 in the Rockstar PC. Like, well, you can get it on Steam and stuff like that, but you have to run it through the Rockstar PC launcher. I believe it's available still on Xbox. I'm not sure. They have this deal with Rockstar where they're going to remake Max Payne 1 and 2. And Rockstar is in bed with them on that. I can't remember exactly how that goes or anything like that. But they have these successful titles, but they're still like Alan Wake 2 digitally. You can't get it through Steam. If you're playing it on PC, you have to get it from the Epic Game Store. They published that game. it was years ago where I remember saying, Remedy has a really, really good relationship with Sony, and I don't know why Sony hadn't made the move to acquire them. Because Sony paid what? I think it was $6 billion for Bungie, and that's been a disaster for them. Bungie telling Sony, The Last of Us Online, I mean, it looks good, but you're not going to make any money off of this game. And then Bungie proceeded to not hit their sales targets, and it fucked up their studio. So there's going to be a point where Sony fully takes over Bungie, and they will be part of PlayStation Studios. And anybody that thinks that that's not going to happen is sadly mistaken. I promise you this is coming. Then we find out that the head of Bungie had this fucking, has this collection of fucking supercars, and he bragged to the employees like, yeah, I just spent $3 million at an auction to get this fucking Porsche from 1920 or whatever. And you're laying people off. So I always wondered, like, why? And also, it felt like a good fit for Sony. But Microsoft is out here fucking buying up studios and publishers like Thanos collecting the fucking Infinity Stones. So why didn't they make a play for fucking Remedy? Because, you know what? I believe the relationship soured when they did Quantum Break, which was the game that was like interactive with, like, it was supposed to be also a TV show. And I can't remember the guy's name. He's the actor that plays Iceman in the Fox X-Men movies, like the early ones or whatever. Well, he's an X-Men. He's in Days of Future Past as well. But anyway, he played Iceman. And that game didn't do well. And I'm thinking, I believe the relationship soured right there. At that point, it's like Remedy and Microsoft, they don't have a relationship because of this game. That felt like the perfect purchase for Sony. Just like I fully believe Sony would have acquired Quantic Dream if it hadn't been for all the sexual harassment allegations and stuff that came out of that studio. Because Detroit Become Human was a phenomenal game. And it's like, well, they feel like they're primed to be acquired by Sony. Remember, you had Beyond Two Souls and you had Heavy Rain. They have a good history on PlayStation consoles. And then the sexual harassment shit comes out and it's like, oh, well, there's no fucking way they can touch them with a 10-foot pole now, right? So it just makes, to me, though, it makes sense that Sony would make a move to acquire Remedy at some point, and I don't know why they haven't. Because Konami pulled that bullshit on Hideo Kojima, and we can all, like, agree that Hideo Kojima, even though he does some really loony shit in his games, when it came to having a straightforward game, like the Metal Gear franchise, he's fucking brilliant. And he was like the first guy to really say, this is more than a video game, this is a film, right? And I cannot wait to play Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. I really can't. I literally listen to the Snake Eater theme song like multiple times a fucking week. Like, it's like the James Bond of video games, whatever. So yeah, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent or anything like that. I just kind of felt like Remedy would be a perfect acquisition for Sony. It just made more sense than, again, to me, it made more sense than fucking Bungie. Because, and again, I talked about this earlier in the show. Yeah, Naughty Dog would have had to have pivoted to continue to release content for The Last of Us Online. But that's something they should have known when they sought out to make that game. When they stepped out at Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest in the summer of 22 and said, hey, The Last of Us Part 1 is coming to PlayStation 5, completely remade for the PlayStation 5 from ground up. And we're also doing a Last of Us Online game, right? Because everybody's like, well, where's Factions? When they showed off The Last of Us 2 for PlayStation 4, everybody's like, the one question, everybody's like, this looks good and this looks interesting, but where is Factions? And everybody's like, so the de facto title became, oh, this is Factions 2, and then it didn't happen. But you knew you would have to pivot somehow when you sought out to make that game. Sony has smaller studios who could have assisted with, monthly drops and battle passes and stuff like that. Don't be fooled to think that's not a thing. They have someone that could have assisted with the life and longevity of that game. I'm just saying. I'm allowed to be critical. I'm allowed to be critical of fucking PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo because I'm a part of all ecosystems. I'm allowed to be critical of Steam. I think their UI is completely outdated. I'm allowed to be fucking critical of Epic Games. The fact that you have to go through Steam, a third-party app, to have DualSense support on PC is ridiculous, right? So I'm allowed to be critical of all of them because I'm a part of each ecosystem and I spend my money there, right? I don't own shares, but I'm still a consumer, so I can say whatever the fuck I want to say. Anyway, moving right along. Speaking of PlayStation, this comes from VideoGamesChronicle.com on the eve, basically, of the release of the PlayStation 5 Pro. PlayStation CEO says PS5 Pro was a 5-year project. Development started before the launch of the PlayStation 5. This is interesting. Sony's console, the PS5, was released on November 19th of 2020. This is incorrect. I want to say that. That week, the Xbox Series X and S came out November 10th, and the PlayStation 5 came out November 12th. They have this date wrong. I just want to be clear about that. But anyway, I digress. According to Sony Interactive Entertainment's Platform Business Group CEO Hideki Nishino, development on its mid-generation upgrade had already started before then. Quote, "We have done Pro in the last generation," Nishino told Variety. "We learned a lot from there. When we were selling the PS4 Pro in addition to the PS4, 20% of customers actually got the PS4 Pro. I still have mine. It was high-end, it was premium tier, so there are potential users acquiring those kind of units." I'm going to pause. The only difference is that the PlayStation 4 Pro at launch was the same price as the PlayStation 4, $400. The PlayStation 5 Pro is $200 more than the disc-based version of the launch PS5. I wanted a digital PS5 at launch because I'm like, if I can save $100 and I'll have that many that many games on disc, I'll do it. And then when I clicked pre-order, I was like, oh, I got the disc-based version. Just like when I pre-ordered my PS3, I slept on the floor of the garden department in Walmart in Warrenton, Missouri to get my PlayStation 3. And I'm like, yeah, give me the 20 gig. Like, we don't have any 20 gigs. I was like, all right, well, give me the 60 gig, which was $100 more. And I don't even want to talk about the conversation I had to have with my mother after, like, you spent $1,000 on a gaming system? Ma, it's $600. That's not what they said on the news. Stop watching the news. Anyway, it was high-end. It was premium tier, so there are potential users acquiring those kind of units. Interestingly enough, it was not just about highly engaged users. Actually, new users came to PlayStation to get PS4 Pro as well. Quote, "So we started working on PS5 Pro even before PS5 launched. It was another 5-year project for us, so there was conversation around whether we wanted to do another Pro or not. The main thing was there are technologies we can grow up in 3 years' time or 5 years' time, so the innovation in technology advancement is more quicker in a modern world. Phones are updating every year. PCs are updating every year. I don't think we go every year updates, but there are things we can package together to bring the greatest things into the game console segment range, so that's the vision." Nishino added that Sony never releases new hardware without already planning what its successor could end up becoming, a la the PlayStation 6. Quote, "We're kind of happy to see that the most engaged gaming users are interested in PS5 Pro, and then I'm pretty sure new users will grab the PS5 Pro as well," he said. "If it's the PlayStation you want to get, that's the thing, so that's where we design the generation at this moment. We design everything with having one ahead in our mind. It's not like we just make a next step and we don't know about the 2 steps ahead. That's not our way of working because we need to make sure that the 10-year-old generation cycle continues to be going as well." Here's a thought for you guys. Maybe next time don't invest in live service games because it didn't work out. We know that Sony is all about film and television. That God of War series is still happening. Twisted Metal came out on Peacock, but the reboot of the game was canceled. That game was happening. Don't be fooled to think that it wasn't a thing. They didn't just fucking stick Anthony Mackie on Peacock and say, have at it. There was a Twisted Metal game being rebooted as well, and it just failed. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. Eventually, someday we'll find out because somebody will leave, whoever was working on it, and they'll go on LinkedIn, and then stuff like that happens, but we don't know. But yeah, interestingly enough, they were already working on the PlayStation 5 Pro before they launched the PlayStation 5. What that tells me is when we got the information, when we got the specs for the PS5 at GDC, which would have been March of 2020, right before the pandemic shut down, at this point, they know what the launch is because we saw the actual hardware 3 months later. And it was supposed to be June. The George Floyd situation happened, and they had a PlayStation 5 showcase scheduled, and because of the George Floyd situation and everything that happened around the nation, they pushed it back a week. And that's the first time we saw the PlayStation 5 hardware, the digital and physical versions. So by the time they hit the stage at the virtual GDC to reveal the specs of the PlayStation 5, they kind of outlined it like, hey, this is the console. And then Jeff Keighley showed us the DualSense before we actually saw the console. So at that point, they were already talking about what the PlayStation 5 Pro would be. And then eventually they just had to nail down the actual look of the hardware because obviously PlayStation has done a slim version with every iteration of PlayStation hardware. So They just made a bigger PlayStation 5 Slim, essentially, with, a little more power under the hood. So it is what it is. In other news, and this, I didn't mean for this to be a PlayStation-heavy show today, but that's just the way the cookie crumbled. PlayStation's Wolverine creative director is now leading Xbox Perfect Dark. This is very interesting. 2 major upcoming first-party video games have gotten big changes at the top. As part of the unusual leadership shuffle, GameFile have learned. Brian Horton, who was publicly named as the creative director of Sony Insomniac's upcoming Marvel Wolverine PS5 game in 2021, has been off the project since the summer. 2 sources familiar with the matter told GameFile. This would explain why we haven't seen anything out of Wolverine since the Insomniac leak about this time last year. Well, I think it was like late November or early December. This game was supposed to come in 2025. Keep in mind. But I want people to remember that Wolverine was supposed to be coming in 2025. I don't think that game is coming in 25. I really don't. Anyway, I'm surprised that they got Spider-Man 2 out on time, because when they showed off Wolverine and Spider-Man 2 at that PlayStation showcase in the fall of 22, or no, was it the fall of 21? It was the fall of 21. Yeah, they're like 2023. And it's like, holy shit. And they actually did launch Spider-Man 2 last year, so good on them. Even though we're not getting any DLC, but whatever. The game is now being helmed by creative director Marcus Smith. A rep for Sony Interactive Entertainment has confirmed the game file. Mike Daly will serve as Wolverine's new game director. Feels like the game is being restarted. Wolverine's previously announced game director Cameron Christian will remain at the studio in a different role, GameFile understands. Smith and Daly are a formidable new duo for Wolverine. They previously held creative director and game director roles, respectively, on Insomniac's acclaimed 2021 PS5 release Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. The changes atop the Wolverine development team are the result of creative decisions around the game, the 2 sources told GameFile. SIE's rep declined to comment on the reason for the role changes on Wolverine. As for Horton, previously worked as the creative director on another lauded Insomniac game, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, he's already found a new high-profile gig. He's the new creative director of the Xbox-published Perfect Dark, the highly anticipated first-person shooter that is being co-developed by Microsoft's The Initiative and Embracer-owned Crystal Dynamics. Horton will be, quote, bringing his wealth of experience to the upcoming reboot of the classic Secret Agent series, and Xbox rep confirmed to GameFile. I don't know what happened over there for this to happen. But again, I'm not taking anything away from Insomniac Studios, because they've been holding up the PlayStation 5. We got Spider-Man Miles Morales on launch day, but it was also on PlayStation 4 as well, because I've literally told this on this podcast a couple of times. I started playing Miles Morales on my PS4 Pro, and then when my PlayStation 5 arrived the next day, I started playing it there. And then last year, about this time, actually last year, I went back and I was like, I have a PS4 save file for Spider-Man Miles Morales, so I double dipped on the Platinum. So I Platinumed that on the PS4 and the PS5, by the way, just saying. But yeah, they had Miles Morales on launch day. They had Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart in June of 21. And then they had Spider-Man 2 October of last year. They've been holding the PlayStation 5 up. It sucks that we're going to have to wait a little longer to play Wolverine. But again, keep in mind, everybody's like, well, the game looked fine. That leak was like, there was a lot of alpha footage in there. A lot of the world hadn't been added. There was some stuff that looked way more fleshed out. Don't get me wrong. But that game was nowhere near ready. At all. At all. The way The Last of Us Part 2 looked when it got leaked, that game was ready to ship. But the pandemic interfered. That game was basically ready to ship. I think they were working on like last minute bugs and stuff like that. Not everybody releases the game with a day one patch. So 2 totally different situations. So I don't know. But I'm sure when Wolverine comes, it's going to be good. Insomniac is just one of the best studios. And like, the fact that it still boggles the mind. I don't think Microsoft understands, like, fundamentally, it's like, do you guys understand, like, how good you've had it and you fucked it up? They had a really good working relationship with Rockstar. Because if you remember, for Grand Theft Auto 4, the Ballad of Gay Tony and the Lost in the Damn DLC, you could only get that on Xbox. You could not get that if you bought the game on PlayStation. Right? They fumbled that. Insomniac made, what is the damn game? They used it to promote that all-white Xbox One. But it's an Insomniac game. And I think PlayStation owns it now. What is the game? Hold on, I gotta do a Google search. Insomniac game. because it's going to drive me crazy. Where's your Wikipedia page, buddy? Do. Where is it? Sunset Overdrive. There it is. It was on Xbox One and on Windows. So now, because Microsoft didn't act, I believe Sony owns that IP. Developer Insomniac Games, publisher Microsoft Studio. What's the IP though? Here's the question. Okay, after Sunset Overdrive was greenlit internally, Insomniac had to pitch it to a number of publishers. Insomniac wanted to retain brand ownership, causing some firms to opt out of publishing it. Murray Smith traveled to Microsoft Studios a number of times to pitch the game. The main pitch began with playing of Kick Out the Jams by MC5 and ended with Murray on top of a chair, mimicking how the game was going to play. Microsoft was eager to work with Insomniac, agreed to fund and publish the game. The team originally did not want to make it a console exclusive. They were impressed by Microsoft's philosophy toward the development of Xbox One and the capabilities of Xbox Live. But it sounds like, yeah, they wanted to retain the IP. And now that Insomniac Games is property of Sony PlayStation Studios, that game is property of PlayStation. And it was an Xbox console exclusive. Like, Microsoft shit the bed. Point blank, period. Anyway, speaking of Microsoft, this is very interesting. This comes from levelup.com. Microsoft makes it clear the future of Xbox is multi-platform. Its games will continue to come to PlayStation and Nintendo consoles. There it is. People have been saying this since the top of the year. Microsoft is going third party. And Iron Lords podcast, we're going to hold the line. We're going to hold the line. We're loyal, Microsoft. We're loyal to Xbox. We're going to hold the line. They're not going third party. Y'all don't know what y'all are talking about. Neither the fuck we are, right? So, good job. You played yourself, bozo. In recent days, new reports have emerged regarding Microsoft and its Xbox multi-platform strategy. On the one hand, it was said that important games from the company were already planned for PlayStation 5, including Avowed, Blade, Perfect Dark, Fable, and Gears of War E-Day. On the other hand, it was reported that the news of the port of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle for PS5 was not well received, so Xbox's upcoming releases for Sony consoles were paused or slowed down but not canceled. Satya Nadella, Microsoft's president and CEO, recently spoke about the topic to clarify definitively what direction Xbox will take. In a letter addressed, where the hell did it go? The page refreshed. A letter addressed to shareholders, he made it clear that the future of Xbox is multi-platform, and more games will be released on PlayStation and Nintendo consoles. As part of its annual report, Microsoft published a letter. It discusses its strategy for the future of its various divisions. Of course, there is a section dedicated to video games and the achievements Xbox has achieved throughout the year. Satya Nadella highlights the acquisition of Activision Blizzard and the role that Xbox Cloud Gaming, a cloud gaming service, has played in bringing games to a broader audience. He emphasized that one of their missions is to offer great games to more people on more devices. He also referenced the arrival of Pentiment, Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, and Sea of Thieves on PlayStation and Nintendo consoles. He made it clear they will continue to expand their content to new platforms in the future without revealing details about which games will be coming to other consoles. Finally, and this is a quote directly from Satya, quote, finally, we brought our 4 of our fan favorite titles. I wouldn't call those 4 games fan favorites, but whatever. To Nintendo Switch and to Sony PlayStation for the first time as we continue to extend our content to new platforms. Continue. There you go. According to recent reports, this new strategy for Microsoft and Xbox is known internally as, quote, Project Latitude. Interesting. According to the details, there is still no consensus on whether it's a good idea to bring most Xbox games to competitor consoles. It is said that Xbox Studios are currently working on several projects that are being considered for PlayStation. Interestingly, the plan would have no restrictions, which would open the doors for any Xbox game to come to PS5. Some reports have mentioned that certain franchises like Halo and Gears of War could be a sort of red line that may not be crossed. I would think this too. I would think that you would keep your tentpole franchises in-house. MLB The Show is only on Xbox and Nintendo Switch because Major League Baseball told Sony either you port this to other consoles or we will take our license and we will go play with who we want to play with. Because they knew that Microsoft would definitely have been like, yeah, we'll put it wherever. We just want it. Because again, it's crazy that the San Diego studio is a PlayStation studio and they make MLB The Show. In fact, that's the only game they make, right? death, taxes, and MLB The Show coming out every year, just like Madden and 2K and Call of Duty to a certain extent. It is a PlayStation title, but it's not in PlayStation Plus. Now, because it's the end of the baseball season, the World Series just ended a couple of nights ago. I don't want to talk about it, but whatever. So no, it's not. It's in PlayStation Plus now as a free game, but day one it's in Game Pass every year since it went to Microsoft. How is that? That's fucking nuts. A PlayStation title is day one on Game Pass. Like, really stop and think about that. I don't think Microsoft is going to start putting games in PlayStation Plus. I think that's still going to be Sony and then their second and third party partners. I don't know Microsoft to be that stupid, but whatever. One could only hope they're not that stupid, let me say. One quote I did hear about this was somebody saying, well, Gears of War is being rebooted with Gears of War E-Day. Because they're like, here's the thing. If they weren't doing Gears of War E-Day and they went into Gears 6 after what happened at the end of Gears 5, right? And if you're exclusive to the PlayStation Network on the console ecosystem and you have not played any Gears of War game, you don't know how the fuck these people got here, right? But if you do a reboot, like a Gears of War E-Day and reboot the franchise, then somebody who's on PlayStation can start day one and they can, experience the story from that point on. So it's possible that Gears would come to PlayStation. Another caveat to that is this. Gears was an Unreal game. And I think it was like a year or two ago, we saw the footage of Gears of War running on PlayStation 3 because there was a PlayStation 3 port, and I forget something happened on the business end where it did not come out on PlayStation 3. But you can see it with the PlayStation button prompts, normally where you see the Xbox button prompts. It exists. So to say that, no, you gotta add Gears or Halo on PlayStation, like, I don't buy that. I don't, especially with what happened. It's no longer 343 Studios. It's Halo Studios. It sounds like they're going to do a soft reboot. Again, if you reboot the franchise and somebody who's never played it before because they were on another console can start over at the beginning, why not? It makes all the sense in the world. So I'm not sold that Gears and Halo won't be coming to PlayStation. I just don't believe that. I just don't. In the PC world, this is interesting news coming from VideoGamesChronicle.com. NVIDIA overtakes Apple as the world's most valuable company. Supplying computing parts for AI development has fueled NVIDIA's surge. Technology giant leapfrogged Apple as its market value reached $3.53 trillion. The companies have traded the crown back and forth this week, with NVIDIA falling back to $3.47 trillion as Apple closed trading at $3.52. NVIDIA's surging market value is being attributed to NVIDIA's status as a leading provider for computing parts required in the development of AI. More companies are now embracing artificial intelligence in their everyday tasks, and demand remains strong for NVIDIA chips, said Russ Mould, investment director at AJ Bell, speaking to Reuters. It is certainly in a sweet spot, and so long as we avoid a big economic downturn in the United States. It's so funny that this is being said right before the election. There's a feeling that companies will continue to invest heavily in AI capabilities, creating a healthy tailwind for NVIDIA. NVIDIA is expected to announce its 50 series graphic card soon. Retail listings for RTX 5050, 5060, 5070, 5080, and 5090 have been found online. They've got to be through the fucking roof because the 40 series cards are dumb expensive. NVIDIA will also supply parts for Nintendo's forthcoming successor to the Nintendo Switch, and we can't wait for that. Nintendo plans to announce its next console during its fiscal year, which runs until March 31st of 2025. Just to clue you guys in, the Nintendo Switch was announced. The preview was the day after Rockstar changed their Twitter header to the Rockstar logo in black and red, and everybody started wigging out like, oh shit, Red Dead, Red Dead, Red Dead. And the next day we got the first Red Dead Redemption 2 trailer, and then that's the day that we saw the Nintendo Switch for the first time. That was October of 2016, and then in January of 2017, we got a full Switch blowout. We got to see games, and we got the release date, and then pre-orders went live that night as well. So I would expect something around January, early to mid-January, maybe late January or early February, but I expect the console to be out. I'm going to shoot for April. And then we'll reconvene on this particular conversation once we get the release date, and we'll see how close I got it. But I'm going to say April. And then lastly, as I said earlier, we would discuss Naughty Dog later. Well, this comes from Yahoo Tech. Naughty Dog's next game is reportedly all about player freedom, and it might just make good on the original idea for The Last of Us 2. This comes from GamesRadar.com, Yahoo Tech. Naughty Dog is primarily noted for its work on narrative-focused linear action games of recent years, thanks to the success of Uncharted and The Last of Us. Now it seems the studio's next game might be leaning into more open-ended design. Pause right there. What they're talking about when they're saying thanks to The Last of Us, when you get to Seattle in The Last of Us Part 2, it's not a true open world, but you have the map, and it's about as open world as a Naughty Dog game would get. That and probably Uncharted 4, when you get into the part where you have the huge pillars and stuff like that, and Nate, Sam, and Sully, they're marking that stuff off. So I think what they started in Uncharted 4, and then they continued in The Last of Us Part 2, I think that the next game, this new IP, not The Last of Us Part 3, but the new IP is going to take to the next level, is what I'm gathering here. Quote, I heard from somebody very in the know who worked on Naughty Dog's next game that they're like Jesus Christ. Ben Hansen, formerly of Game Informer, says in the most recent episode of his MinMax podcast, thank you, VGC, the tone was like, you are all not ready for how amazing this thing is going to be. I'm not going to say that the game that they reference to compare it to, because I don't want people to be like, MinMax said it was going to be exactly like this. Okay, so they have a comparison out there, and it's supposed to blow people's minds, so this should be interesting. They compared it to a game with a lot of player freedom. Like, did you like that game? And I said yes. And it's like, well, there you go. It's going to be good. That's vague to say the least, but given how desperate fans have been for new info on whatever Naughty Dog is doing next, any kind of morsel of insight is going to be devoured. Hansen notes that the game reference was not Hitman, but beyond that, the meaning of player freedom here is completely open to your interpretation. We've already seen Naughty Dog take a few tentative steps in this direction. Uncharted 4 saw some experiments with semi-open world areas and otherwise linear game structure. What did I just say? Like, come on, dog, I know this shit. And that idea was greatly expanded on in the early Seattle chapter of The Last of Us 2. Again, Derrick is right again. Look at that. It seems Naughty Dog was originally quite keen on that idea. 2, as the studio has confirmed, The Last of Us 2 was originally a Bloodborne-inspired open-world game. Thank God they didn't go that way. I know a lot of y'all love Bloodborne, and I know a lot of y'all love Souls genre games. That shit is not for me. As for Naughty Dog's next game, studio head Neil Druckmann noted back in 2023 that he was interested in trying something a little bit new, a little bit different that not everybody's going to like. In the same interview, he said, I'm more recently intrigued by stuff like Elden Ring and Inside that doesn't rely as much on traditional narrative to tell its story. He quickly noted that the studio is unlikely to ditch dialogue and cutscenes altogether, but it seems likely his next game will still take on a much different form than we've gotten used to from Naughty Dog. I don't know if I'm going to like this. I had to be completely honest with you. I don't like Souls genre games. And if they're leaning heavy on Elden Ring or inspiration by Elden Ring, I'm probably not going to like this game. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. This doesn't feel like it's going to be a Derrick game. And I'm worried. And because I love Naughty Dog. Like going back to Crash Bandicoot and even Jak and Daxter. But I think they really broke through when they created Nathan Drake in the Uncharted universe. I just thought it was brilliant. Even the fact that, like, a lot of people don't realize, if you didn't know this, there's an Easter egg in Uncharted 3. When you're in the bar very early in the game where the bar fight breaks out, if you walk around to the very end of the bar, there's a newspaper on the bar, and it's talking about a fungal breakout. And that's The Last of Us. That's where the hint is in there. And then also, when you break into the bank vault in The Last of Us Part 2, Nathan Drake's ring is in there. Sic Magna Parvis, I think is the description of the ring. It doesn't matter. It's just Naughty Dog Easter eggs within their games. It's like, hey, this is a universe to a certain extent, right? I don't know. I'm really finicky about again, I've said this many a time on here. Every game does not have to be a 100-hour open world experience with a map with a bunch of icons, because Ubisoft has done that to death. And guess what? Ubisoft pushed back Assassin's Creed into early next year. Star Wars Outlaws did not perform well. So that whole formula that they thought was gold clearly isn't working. So I just don't want again, I have a problem with this earlier. Every game did not need to add a battle royale mode because Epic Games made money hand over fist on Fortnite. It doesn't work for everybody. It just doesn't. And I don't want Naughty Dog chasing trends because they are like when people ask me, well, who are the best developers in the business? Naughty Dog's always at the top of my list. Rockstar Games is always at the fucking top of my list. Insomniac has put themselves at the top of my list. Activision, like Treyarch, Raven, Sledgehammer, for what they do on the Call of Duty titles, they're at the top of my list. I remember when CD Projekt was like, we're up there. And I'm like, no, the fuck you're not. The Witcher is extremely overrated. Cyberpunk 2077 was a fucking disaster at launch. You're not up there. You're really not. I'm glad that they fixed that game and it's done a lot better, but you're not up there yet. But Naughty Dog and Rockstar, I don't want to see either of them chase trends. With Rockstar, it's different because they're very satirical. The Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer, you got like, it's TikTok and Instagram Live. You got girls twerking on cars. It's extreme. It's Grand Theft Auto is a satirical look at the world as it is today. And that's fine. That's a different way of chasing a trend. It's a completely different way, and I have no problem with that. I don't want Naughty Dog making a game that's inspired by Elden Ring because it's just not needed. It really isn't needed. So, I don't know. Anyway, that's all I've got for you guys today. I'm going to go ahead and end this like I end everything else. Believe in yourself first and foremost, because if you don't believe in yourself, of course, nobody else will believe in you. As always, my name is Derrick Lamon Jackson, and that is my time. Y'all have a good one. Peace out.